You ever notice how the moment you stop reaching out, everything suddenly feels different? The silence, it's heavy at first. You keep checking your phone, wondering if they're thinking about you too. But here's the truth. Silence is not weakness. It's power. Because when both people stop contacting each other, the balance shifts. What was once constant attention becomes mystery. What was once predictable becomes uncertain. And in that uncertainty, the game flips. See, human psychology is wired to chase what's slipping away. The moment you stop feeding someone your energy, they start to feel the void you used to fill. It's not manipulation, it's magnetism. Silence forces reflection. It makes the other person question, did I lose something real? Most people panic when communication stops. They break no contact, they chase, they beg for closure. But the strongest move you can make is to do nothing. To sit in the silence, to let time reveal what words never could. Because when you no longer seek validation, you become the validation. When you stop reaching out, they start remembering your value. And when you both fall silent, the one who feels it most isn't the one who let go first. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly why the power of silence flips the dynamic, how to stay grounded when emotions pull you back, and what really happens in their mind when you stop contacting each other. This is where the real shift begins. The moment the contact stops, the silence becomes deafening. You tell yourself you're strong, that you won't text, won't check their socials, won't give in, but hours stretch like days. Every quiet moment feels like a test of willpower. You start wondering if they're thinking about you, if they've already moved on, or if they're feeling this same ache. That's why no contact feels so incredibly difficult, because you're not just resisting them, you're resisting your own habits. When you've been emotionally attached to someone, your brain gets used to the dopamine hits, the texts, the calls, the late night conversations. Each message was a little reward, a confirmation that you mattered to them. So when that connection disappears, your mind goes into withdrawal. It's not just emotional pain, it's chemical. Your brain starts craving what it's been conditioned to receive. Validation, attention, closeness. And now all it has is silence. That's why you check your phone even when you know there's nothing new. Why your chest tightens every time you see a notification that isn't from them. Why part of you almost hopes they'll reach out just so the discomfort ends. But here's the hard truth. That discomfort is where your growth begins. Silence forces you to confront the parts of yourself you tried to fill with someone else. It reveals how much of your happiness depended on another person's presence. It makes you realize that your peace was never meant to come from outside of you. No contact feels difficult because it's rewiring your emotional system. It's breaking the dependency that once felt like love but was really attachment. Most people fail during this phase because they confuse discomfort with loss. They think the pain means they're losing the connection, when in reality it means they're finally releasing it. Every urge to reach out is your old self begging for comfort. But every time you choose silence, you're training a new version of yourself, one that no longer needs external validation to feel whole. And while you're struggling to sit with that silence, something else is happening on the other side. They start to notice your absence. They feel the energy shift. The person who once expected your attention now starts to wonder why it's gone. That's the beginning of the flip. But it only happens if you stay still long enough to let it. So yes, no contact hurts. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely. It's full of moments that make you question your decision. But every second you resist the urge to break it, you reclaim a piece of your power. And one day, the silence that once felt unbearable starts to feel peaceful. That's when you know you've turned the pain into strength. Something strange happens after the silence lingers long enough. At first you feel like you're the one losing control, overthinking, replaying memories, questioning your decision. But then something inside you starts to shift. It's subtle at first. The pain that used to grip your chest begins to fade. The urge to reach out loses its power. The silence that once felt like punishment starts to feel like protection. That's the first emotional shift, when you realize you're no longer reacting from fear, but responding from peace. It's as if the energy you once poured into them is slowly coming back to you. You start to feel lighter, calmer, even confident again. You begin to see the situation for what it really was, not what you wished it could have been. That's the moment you begin to reclaim your energy. And when that happens, the dynamic flips without a single word being spoken, because energy doesn't lie. They can feel the difference. The version of you that once waited by the phone no longer exists. The person who once gave everything so easily is now in control of their emotions. That quiet, grounded energy is magnetic, not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you've stopped chasing. On their side, confusion starts to grow. They notice you're not reacting the same way. No posts about missing anyone. No subtle attempts to get attention, just stillness. And that stillness speaks louder than any message could. They start to wonder if you've moved on, and for the first time they're the one feeling the silence. The energy between two people is like a pendulum. When one pulls back, the other feels the imbalance. In the beginning, you were the one chasing, reaching, giving. Now the pendulum swings back. You've stopped feeding it, and the energy begins to return to you. Naturally, powerfully. It's not about playing games, it's about energetic balance. As that shift continues, your mindset evolves. You stop checking your phone. You stop caring whether they think about you or not. You focus on your own rhythm, your goals, your peace. And ironically, that's when they feel your absence the most. Not because you disappeared, but because your energy is no longer available to them. That's when they start to remember the version of you they once took for granted. That's when curiosity turns into longing. But here's the key, you can't force this shift. It only happens when you truly let go. When you stop waiting for a reaction and start living your truth. When the energy changes, everything changes. You stop chasing closure and become it. You stop waiting for their validation and realize your silence is the message. And that's the real turning point. When you no longer need them to notice the difference, because you already feel it within. Detachment isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about understanding that caring and clinging are two very different things. True detachment is emotional maturity. The point where you still feel love, but it no longer controls your decisions. It's the art of letting go without shutting down. When we attach ourselves to someone, we unconsciously build an identity around them. Their responses determine our mood. Their approval shapes our worth. Their presence defines our peace. That's why losing contact feels like losing part of yourself. Because for a while you made them the center of your emotional gravity. But psychology teaches us that lasting peace only comes when you reclaim that center. Detachment begins the moment you stop reacting to what they do and start responding to what you feel. It's the shift from "why aren't they texting me" to "why do I need that text to feel okay?" That's self-awareness, and it's where healing begins. When you practice detachment, you break the cycle of emotional dependency. You stop assigning responsibility for your happiness to someone else. The brain slowly rewires. The reward system that once depended on their attention begins to stabilize. You stop craving the high of connection and start appreciating the calm of self-trust. That inner balance is what people sense when they say, "You've changed." But detachment doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you love without fear. You can still wish them well, still remember the good moments, but now you're not attached to the outcome. Whether they return or stay gone, you're grounded either way. That's real strength, loving freely without losing yourself in the process. Here's what's fascinating. Psychology shows that when you release emotional pressure, the dynamic around you often changes. The person who once pulled away starts feeling the gap. They sense that your energy no longer depends on theirs. And that realization quietly challenges their ego. Because when someone knows you can walk away and still be whole, that's when they truly start to value your presence. Detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the point where silence no longer feels like punishment but like peace. Where your thoughts stop racing, and your body finally relaxes because it knows you're safe within yourself. And that's the paradox of letting go. The more you release control, the more power you actually gain. You stop forcing outcomes and start allowing what's real to unfold. You stop begging for energy and start attracting alignment. Detachment is not the end of connection, it's the beginning of balance. Because once you learn to love without attachment, nothing and no one can shake your peace again. At first, they don't notice. They assume the silence is temporary. They think you'll be back. That eventually your emotions will get the best of you, and you'll reach out like before. That's the comfort of familiarity. They've grown used to your presence, to your consistency, to knowing that no matter how far they pull back, you'll find a way to reconnect. But then the days pass. The notifications stop. The messages they expected never come. The story they were used to, the one where you chase, explain, or fix, quietly disappears. And that's when something begins to shift inside them. Confusion, curiosity, maybe even a little bit of panic. They start to replay old conversations. They scroll through pictures, checking timestamps, wondering when the distance began. They think about moments they brushed off, words they said too, casually, silences they didn't take seriously. Suddenly, the absence they once wanted becomes uncomfortable, because what they thought was control now feels like loss. Psychologically, it's a reversal of reinforcement. When attention disappears, the human mind naturally craves it again, especially when it was once freely given. They may not admit it, but your silence disrupts the rhythm they were used to. It forces them to confront what life actually feels like without you in it. They might check your social media, quietly, anonymously, just to see if you're okay. They might ask mutual friends how you've been, pretending it's casual, or they might just sit in the quiet, trying to convince themselves they don't care. But every moment they spend doing that is proof that the absence is working. Because absence, when it's intentional and grounded in self-respect, speaks volumes. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it simply echoes. And that echo reminds them of what your presence used to feel like. Warmth, attention, connection, safety. The same qualities they may have taken for granted. As time passes, they start to feel the imbalance. The same silence that once empowered them now unsettles them. They begin to wonder if you've moved on, if someone else is filling the space they left empty. That uncertainty fuels curiosity, and curiosity often turns into action. A message, a reaction, a reach out, even if it's just to test the waters. But here's the key: when they finally notice your absence, your job isn't to prove your worth again. It's to remember why you created that space in the first place. Their realization is not your reward. It's just evidence that your detachment worked. Because true transformation doesn't happen when they miss you. It happens when you no longer need them to. And by the time they finally notice what's missing, you've already found something far greater: your peace. And then, something changes. Slowly, almost quietly at first. The balance that once leaned in their favor begins to tilt. The same silence that made you question yourself now starts to make them wonder about you. The energy that once chased outward has returned home, centered, calm, and that's when the game flips. It's not a game of manipulation or revenge. It's a game of energy, of perception. When you no longer seek, you become sought. The moment you stop reacting, you start radiating a different frequency. Confidence replaces need, presence replaces pursuit. And people feel that difference even if they can't explain it. They start to notice that your tone has changed. Lighter, detached, maybe even happy. You're no longer waiting for their attention, because your life is full again. They sense it in your energy, your silence, your stillness, and what used to make them feel secure, your constant availability, is gone. That's when curiosity turns into chase. They might start small. A like on your post, a random "Hey, how have you been?" message that pretends to be casual, but it's not casual. It's an invitation, a test, a quiet question. Are you still the same? They want to know if the door is still open, if the version of you who once gave everything still exists. But by now, something deeper has changed in you. You're not waiting, you're not hoping, you're simply observing. You can see the pattern clearly. How silence drew them closer, how letting go made them return. You understand that what flipped the game wasn't luck or timing. It was your energy shifting from desperation to alignment. See, the human mind is wired to chase what it no longer feels entitled to. When your attention becomes scarce, its value skyrockets. When your energy becomes selective, people notice what once felt ordinary now feels rare, and rarity, psychologically, triggers pursuit. But here's the twist: when they start to chase, you don't need to run or retreat. You just need to remain steady. because the real victory isn't in making them come back. It's in realizing you don't need them to anymore. Their pursuit is only a reflection of the balance you've restored within yourself. When the game flips, everything looks different. The silence that once scared you becomes your strategy. The distance that once hurt you becomes your boundary. And the love that once drained you becomes self-love, pure, peaceful, and powerful. So when they start to chase, remember you didn't win because they came back. You won because you finally stopped losing yourself trying to make them stay. When the game flips and they start to chase, the hardest part isn't getting their attention. It's keeping your center. Because once the energy shifts, the temptation to fall back into old habits can be strong. They reach out, and your mind starts racing. Should I reply? Should I act cold? Should I show I've moved on? But the truth is, keeping the upper hand isn't about control. It's about composure. Being grounded means you no longer operate from reaction, but from awareness. You remember the silence that rebuilt you. You remember the nights you wanted to reach out, but didn't. You remember how much it took to reclaim your peace, and you protect that peace at all costs. The real power lies in staying emotionally neutral. You don't need to prove a point or play hard to get. You simply stand in the energy of self-respect, because people can feel when you've truly changed. They sense when your confidence isn't an act, when it's coming from deep inner security, not ego, and that's what keeps you untouchable. They may test your boundaries again. They may say things that once would have triggered you. They might try to pull you back into the familiar rhythm where you overgive and they underappreciate. But this time, you know better. You've learned that not every message deserves a reply, and not every apology deserves access. Staying grounded is understanding that attention isn't affection, and words aren't change. It's being calm enough to observe their actions without losing yourself in emotion. It's realizing that you can care, but still choose distance, that you can feel love, but still choose peace. When you keep your focus on yourself, the dynamic stays in your favor, not because you're playing games, but because you're finally living by your own emotional rules. You no longer chase closure. You are the closure. You no longer seek validation. You embody it. And as you remain grounded, they feel it. The more centered you become, the more unstable they feel in your absence. That's the paradox. The calmer you are, the more they question, because energy speaks louder than any reply ever could. Remember, staying grounded isn't about showing you don't care. It's about showing that you're free, from need, from fear, from the version of yourself that settled for less. The upper hand isn't about power over them. It's about power within you. So, when they finally circle back, unsure of how to approach you, smile gently, not out of arrogance, but out of peace, because now you know something you didn't before. Silence taught you strength, distance taught you clarity, and self-respect taught you how to never lose the upper hand again. So here you are, a few minutes later, in the silence that once scared you but now feels like home. You've walked through the confusion, the ache, the emptiness. You've seen how the energy shifts when you stop chasing, how the balance returns when you let go, and how the game flips the moment you reclaim your power. If there's one truth this entire journey reveals, it's this: you were never losing them. You were finding yourself. Every unanswered message, every quiet night, every urge you resisted was a small victory that brought you closer to who you really are. The pain that once felt unbearable became the pressure that shaped your strength. The silence that once felt like punishment became your teacher. You've learned that love doesn't require constant communication to be real. It requires respect, space, and truth. You've learned that detachment isn't coldness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that your worth doesn't decrease just because someone couldn't see it. And you've learned that sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is no statement at all. The key takeaway from all of this is simple but profound. The game doesn't flip because they suddenly change. It flips because you do. When you stop seeking validation, you start radiating it. When you stop chasing energy, you start attracting alignment. You move from attachment to awareness, from reaction to reflection, from waiting to creating. And that's where freedom begins, when your peace no longer depends on someone else's presence. Because once you taste that kind of independence, you can never go back to begging for attention again. So whether they come back or stay gone, it doesn't define your worth. What defines you is how you handled the silence, with dignity, patience, and self-respect. You didn't crumble, you transformed. You didn't lose the connection, you outgrew the need for it. Now when you think about the phrase, when you both stop contacting each other, the game flips. Remember that the flip isn't about winning or losing. It's about balance returning to where it always belonged within you. As this video closes, take a deep breath. Let the past stay in the past. Let silence be your peace, not your punishment. And if they ever do return, meet them not with revenge or regret, but with calm awareness of who you've become. Because the greatest power move isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. You survived the silence, you mastered the waiting, and now you've become the version of yourself that no longer needs the game. Because you are the peace they're still searching for.